I'm with Kellyanne Conway. We're here at CPAC, and it's a kind of an important thing right now going on with President Obama, our current, you could say, liberal president, and how he's going to change things in this country. Do we believe that that change would be good for America?
Well, the campaign promise of hope and change was quite attractive to many Americans because it was so unspecified, and so they were able to fill in the blank, the adjective, if you will, however they wanted to. And that means he can too as president. And some of the first things he has done as president of the United States has been to gut many of the strides that what has become a center-right country, believing mainly in pro-life issues, fought so hard to achieve. You know, very few people, about 9% of Americans, agree with the Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama view on abortion, which is basically abortion anyone, anytime, anywhere. They voted against partial birth abortion bans. When Barack Obama was in the Chicago State Senate, he famously opposed the Born Alive Infant Act, which of course would have allowed medical care to be administered to survivors of botched abortions instead of letting them, quote, expire. And looking back in the campaign, I think one of the fundamental mistakes that those who were in charge of the Republican Party and the McCain campaign made is in not making more of a household name and an issue of Jill Stanek, for example, the nurse who did administer to one of these survived abortion victims in Illinois, because rather than trying to talk about Bill Ayers, talk about Jill Stanek. And I think that would have resonated as a huge issue for Americans, but it's not too late. People still really need to know that saying that you're, quote, pro-choice versus saying that you're for allowing a child who either partially delivered then has the brains of his skull sucked out and or after surviving such a botched abortion is left to expire rather than survive. And we have so many millions of people in this country alone wanting to adopt and give love to children.
And do you think that because of this election now, do you think that there will be a lot more energy in the conservative/Republican movement, maybe for people to recognize that they should stand behind issues like pro-life, maybe just a little bit more?
Well, if you look around at CPAC, you are confronted immediately with the fact that conservatives feel like they're getting their mojo back. And it's not just to say no and to oppose Barack Obama's agenda. It actually is to reclaim their grounding, their original footing, which is to be the limited government party. A lot of that was lost and squandered on George W. Bush's presidency. You know, the movement was looking for the next Reagan, the next Reagan, the next Reagan in 2000, and they chose a Bush, and eventually they got a Bush. And many people are very disappointed with the runaway spending. And that's why I see that as President Obama continues to tax and spend and borrow our way into the so-called future, the great danger he runs is not being compared to FDR or John Kennedy or Abe Lincoln, but the great risk he runs is being compared to George W. Bush with all these spending. I talked to about two members of Congress this week, Republican members of Congress, the night of the address to Congress, and I made the remark to both of them, both of whom had voted for most of Bush's spending packages over the years, but both of whom, of course, voted against Obama's, that there was very little difference in principle with respect to the use, really the size and scope and the power of government with respect to those two packages, but that the messenger was different. So all of a sudden they noticed that, oh, it's the other team that wants this stuff, therefore it's easier for us to be against it. And if that's what it takes for folks to really get back to the basics, then terrific. The other scary thing, I think, particularly for the pro-life community with respect to President Obama's administration just a month into it, is he made some promises to the extreme left with respect to abortion policy. So he waited until the day after pro-lifers marched on Capitol Hill on the 36th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, but he waited a whole day and then stripped the Mexico City policy enactments that had the strides that had been made over the years. And he's promised the community a lot else. In fact, this week there's been discussion about stripping the Conscience Clause, which would basically force Catholic hospitals included to offer the so-called Plan B or morning after pill, and basically doctors who disagree morally with a course of treatment would be forced to administer that treatment even if there were alternatives, like a doctor who doesn't morally object. A pharmacist, of course, would be in this problem. We've actually polled on this issue for the Christian Medical Association, and powerful numbers of Americans believe that a medical professional should be able to opt out of administering certain forms of care, quote, care or treatment when it comes to abortion if they morally object to it.
And I think that's really significant, because if the average person out there, especially the average pro-life person, were forced to give an abortifacient to someone, they wouldn't really like to do that, would they?
Well, that's right, and it needs to be respected, and it just always confounds me that the great irony is that the so-called, pro-individual, pro-choice movement really has no room for an alternative viewpoint, and at this point is ignoring science and medicine. The great stride of the pro-life movement in the last 20 years is that where religion and morality did not grip all of the folks one way or the other on the abortion issue, science and medicine stepped into the breach. People have seen sonograms in the most unintrusive way. They're saying, gee, the fetus beat us. I know what I see on the screen is not just a pollywog forever, and I think that is it's actually a great stride for the pro-life movement.
All right, well, thank you. Oh, what's your website real quick?
www.pollingcompany.com.
Great. Thank you very much.